Mungkin kita boleh mulai? Tes. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm warmly welcome you who join us in person and via Zoom to our last panel for the day to discuss on Planet Zero, the roadmap to zero emissions. My name is Bob Stiadi. I am the infrastructure analyst for CGS-CIMB Sekuritas, which will also be your moderator for today. With me, we have an esteemed panelist, which should give us some insight on the topics. First, we have Pak Joko Siswanto. He is the Secretary General of National Energy Council, or DEN. Then we have Pak Nelwin Aldiansyah, the Finance Director for Pertamina Geothermal Energy. And last, we have Pak Putra Aidiguna, which is the Energy Analyst for the Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis. I will keep the introduction brief so we can have longer discussion on the topic. However, I think the issue of the global warming, carbon reductions, renewable energy, has been one of the top agenda recently, not only for the financial market, but also for us as the human species. As a result, most of the major economy in the world have given their pledge to start the energy transitions toward, with aim to achieve a net zero emissions by certain years. This include Indonesia, which aim 2060 as the year when it will reach the net zero. With that in mind, I would like to invite Pak Joko to give his presentation to us as the Secretary General for DEN, which have been advising the Indonesia government in formulating the energy policy. I believe we can learn a lot from him. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to Pak Joko.
Thank you, Moderator. Honorable panelists and distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. As per request from committee, the first three concerning regarding next letter rule, the Indonesia has pledged its commitment to reach net zero emission by 2060. Second one, the short and mid and long-term goals set in achieving such targets. And then the last first three, the country balance between the need for financing economic growth without compromising environmental commitment and the opportunity. Okay, if we're talking about net zero emission, is different with zero emission. So we cannot reach zero emission because billion people, breathe, produce CO2, right? So we're talking about net zero emission. So net is mean, for example, the simple formula, 50% fossil and 50% new and renewable, net is zero. That's just a simple formula. So next slide. As we know that, so how about, for example, 60% fossil and 40% new and renewable energy, it become net or not, depends. If we still use fossil and then we complete it with the technology of CCS or CCUS, it probably also become net zero. So we are lucky because our president already ratification of the Paris Agreement, our target 29%, we reduce CO2 by ourselves, and then 41% by international support. And also, we are lucky before we ratification the Paris Agreement, also we already have government regulation number 79, 2014. There is any target of the energy mix, and also supported by Presidential Decree number 22, 2017, so 1 year after Paris Agreement, we have target 23% of the new and renewable energy in 2025 and 31% in 2050. And also in the COP 2026 in Glasgow, we also commit to accelerate net zero emission 2060 or faster. That's from our president. Next slide, please. This is in the government regulation that I already explained. Next slide, please. This is the realization of the new and renewable energy. So in blue line is the target from government regulation and president decree. So the red one is the realization. So we are close. We are close to the targets. If we compare 5 years before, for example, in 2015, the green one already just only 4.97, right? So after 5 years, currently 2021, we already got almost 2 times. So how about in 2025? Probably we can reach the target. So we can check later on. Next slide. This is the realization of the national determined contribution. Our target in 2030, we have 341 million tons CO2 reduction by ourselves and by international support, 446 from the energy sector. So besides energy sector, we also have from waste, from agriculture, forestry, etc. So the gray blocks is the targets, and then the yellow color blocks is the realization. So we are optimistic because the realization currently is more than the targets. Next slide. The country balance between the need for financing economic growth without compromising environmental commitment and the opportunity. Our president said, next slide, the transformation, new and renewable energy as well as acceleration of green technology-based economic will become a crucial transformation in our economy. So the cost also very high to become reach the targets. Our presidents already know about that. So at least president know about this target. Next slide. From the number, if you look this, we already calculate the projection of how much cost we need to realize NDC program. In total, we need around 3,800 trillion rupiah. Of it, 3,500 trillion rupiah is needed for energy sector. This is our calculation, our prediction. The Minister of Environmental and Forestry has made an estimation how much we should spend in order to support NDC program from 2022 to 2030. For energy sector, the number is estimated to be 3,500 trillion rupiah, with detail as follow: 1,700 trillion for renewable power plant development program, 8.4 trillion for other renewable development, direct use, and 1,600 trillion for low carbon coal power plant, 17 trillion for city gas and kerosene conversion to LPG, and 92 trillion of energy conservation. With this number, we can expect that money required to achieve net zero emission target will be much higher than NDC. This is where the government needs to support from private sector to fund projects related to energy transition and also from international support. Next slide. Next slide. Okay. Aligned with government target to boost the development of new and renewable energy, PLN, state-owned company electricity, has planned to develop more renewable power plant than fossil fuel power plant. As stated in the Green RUPTL, 2021 until 2030, PLN set the target to build 20.9 gigawatts or 51.6 come from new and renewable energy. The additional capacity investment require 52.2 billion US dollar. Total installed capacity of renewable energy in 2030 is about 31.42 gigawatts. The total investment in energy transition to electricity in the period 2022 until 2060 is around 1,200 billion US dollar, of which power generation is around 1,000 billion and transmission line of 135 billion US dollar. The average investment required is around 29 billion per year US dollar, equivalent IDR 435 trillions. It means 20% of Indonesian state budget. Next slide. The current and or necessary pathway for Indonesia to reach net zero carbon emission by 2060 or faster. The necessary step required to reduce Indonesian dependency of fossil fuel. Next slide. As I said earlier, we still use fossil fuel until 2060, I mean, but it should be completed by clean technology, CCS or CCUS, carbon capture storage, and carbon capture utilization and storage. So technology already there, some country already use that. And in Indonesia, currently in upstream oil and gas already used, and some pilot project still going on now. Next slide. So President also give direction to Dewan Energi Nasional, National Energy Council. We have to make a Grand Strategy Energy Nasional, we call it GISEN. So the first priority, the first program, we have to reduce fossil import. We still now import 80% of LPG for cooking. We import 50% crude oil for our refinery, and then we still import 50% of gasoline. So currently the price of fossil we are import is very high. So it's make difficulties for country, even Pertamina. So our program, how we work hard to reduce the import. For example, we have program, or we call it city gas or electricity vehicle, and also electric stove, and also we already groundbreaking for dimethyl ether for reduce LPG, and we also have program, a lot of program to increase new and renewable energy. Next slide. We have planned to reduce until zero import for gasoline. We already success with the B30, we call it. Now we under a pilot project for B40. So this is make Indonesian no more import for the diesel oil. So we have program to reduce until zero import for gasoline with the electric vehicle, and also use of natural gas for transportation. And then we trying to improve our capacity of refinery, new refinery, and also upgrade refinery. And also we will increase to use, we call it biofuel. We're trying for use methanol and ethanol for the gasolines, and also for after as well. If our refinery also on stream in 2027, it become produce more gasolines. That's in our grand strategy national. Next slide. This is the number, like I said before, in the Paris Agreement and national distribution contribution. Next slide. Okay, we still have 5 minutes. We also already have make it a draft final of the roadmap for net zero emission in 2060. For example, this every 5 years we will evaluate. Yeah. Okay, the first 5 years we have target in 2025 20% of new renewable energy, and the second 5 years 25.4, and then until 2050 based on our regulation 31%, but we will increase until 50%, and the last in 2060 60.9. It means will be net zero, because the renewable energy already more than fossil. So we will increase city gas to reduce LPG, and electric vehicle, also electric stove for our cooking. Next slide. If you look by charts, we can see the number of the green one. We increase the new and renewable energy, and then we reduce coal and oil, and also gas. Next slide. This is power development plan by RUPTL PLN. The targets, we call it green RUPTL. From year to year, our target. And also, next slide, PLN already have the program. We have still 5,200 diesel power plant units in 2,130 locations. So from time to time, we eliminated the diesel power plant with the gas and new and renewable energy combined. Next slide. We also have roadmap to phase out coal, for electricity based on the contract. This is our roadmap. And then how feasible are the current regulation and power agreement to support development of renewable energy in Indonesia? So next slide. Next slide. Okay, the main challenge in renewable energy, such as purchase agreement generally, take and pay, government support is needed in land acquisition, intermittent production from source new and renewable energy, and very dependent on the natural condition long-term tenor and low interest rate from international bank need to be reviewed from the environmental and legal aspect. Lenders still prefer sponsor guarantees, construction and operation risk, less attractive tariff that do not cover investor expectation. Assumption, output reliability, improve abilities and skill. The lender propose to have a step in the correct clause, need more security on the future policy in new and renewable energy. Indonesia realized that, next slide, creating an enabling policy environment to stimulate investment is key to speed up renewable energy adoption. Some policies and regulation to accelerate the energy transition would be for new energy development. Comprehensive policy are needed to create an investment climate for sustainable and fair new energy development and to improve welfare for the community. The new and renewable law will have a role as follow: provide legal certainty, strengthen institution and governance, create a conducive investment climate for investor, optimize new and renewable resource in supporting industrial development and the national economy, and strengthen new and renewable funding. For new and renewable electricity price as follow: PLN obligation to purchase electricity from new and renewable energy plant, cover all types of renewable energy power plant, pricing mechanism, fiscal and non-fiscal incentive for new and renewable electricity developers, and provision of replacement costs for PLN if the purchase of the new and renewable electricity causes an increase in PLN's BPP. Video policy, next slide. Reform that improve the bankability of renewable energy projects could attract more green capital. As of 2021, the PPA and tariff scheme has not resulted in predictable cash flow, limited investor confidence. The presidential regulation on renewable energy tariff, a regulation high anticipated by market players, is intended to address this. This is a positive step toward boosting renewable investment, more profitable pricing scheme for renewable project, and could improve project bankability and boost the confidence of private investor. Further favorable regulation, especially for solar rooftop, are already in place to support the 6,500 megawatts of installed solar power capacity target by 2025. The Minister Energy and Mineral Resources introduced Regulation number 26 of 2021. This regulation eliminates the discount price for solar energy export to PLN. This financial incentive is expected to spur the growth of domestic solar PV installation and industry and potential promote green jobs. Furthermore, the government has amended the Minister Energy and Mineral Resources Regulation number 50/2017 by enacting the Regulation number 53/2018 and Minister Regulation number 4/2020 previously. BOOT scheme structure of PPA limiting the potential revenue generation period of project, which in may worsen the bankability of renewable energy power plant project. The revision of Ministerial Decree number 50/2017 with Regulation number 4/2020 is expected to increase new and renewable based electricity supply from private sector atau IPP. The RUPTL also allocate a bigger share to independent power producer IPP in developing power generation project. PLN support private sector participation in the development of electricity infrastructure, where 44.8% of the power plant portion is planned to be developed by the private sector and 56.3% of renewable power plant planned to be developed by the private sector. Funding support to achieve the target of the climate agenda can more from the public, private, and international sector toward a just and affordable transition. One of the challenges ahead is strengthening the feasibility of national green projects so that they can finance by the financial sector and receive international supports. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Joko, for the presentation. I think it's very clear that the government is really supported on the energy transition program, and we will definitely look forward for the regulations which could accelerate the development. I think we can go to the Q&A section. So if the audience in the floor or the one that's in Zoom want to have questions, just let us know. But let me start with the first question first. I think I will ask Pak Nelwin. I think Pak Joko's show in the slides that the PLN has 3.3 gigawatt to add in geothermal in the next 10 years. So what will be Pertamina geothermal role on these ambitions by the Indonesia government?
Thank you, Pak Bob. Thank you, Pak Joko. Very thorough and interesting presentation from Pak Joko. Currently, Pertamina, we have installed capacity of 672 megawatts of geothermal power plants. In addition to that, some of our working concession area is also operated by our GOC partners, bringing together about 1.9 gigawatts of installed capacity of geothermal power. Yeah, in the next 5 years, we already plan to develop another 600 megawatts additional capacity as a contribution to reach that 3.3 gigawatt additional geothermal capacity by 2030. So I think this is a very interesting moment for new and renewable energy developers to contribute to reach the renewable energy mix target of 23% by 2025, and also to help Indonesia's government ambition to reach the net zero emission by 2060. We are ready to develop new fields and also to participate or to form joint venture with new partners to develop further to reach that ambition by 2060.
Thank you, Pak Nelwin. I think I will move on to a question to Pak Putra. I read a few articles from IEEFA, which talking about the economics of constructing fossil fuel and renewable plants in Indonesia. So probably could you give us some brief summary on this issue, such as, in your opinion, which power plant do you think is the most feasible to be constructed in Indonesia now, or probably the hurdles in building those power plants?
Okay, thank you, Pak Bob. Thank you for having me this afternoon, Pak Joko, Pak Nelwin Izin. So, it is tempting to give an answer, a simple answer, this is the power plant that we can build, but whenever we talk about the power system, we need to talk about it at a system level basis. It's not useful to do an analysis at Indonesia level when you talk about a power system. If we break it down, we can break it down. I like to call it the two Indonesia. We have two different Indonesia. One Indonesia is the Java and Sumatra, there's a lot of people, a lot of power capacity, and a lot of excess capacity. And the second Indonesia is the smaller islands, which has a lot of diesel power, like Pak Joko just mentioned. So I think it's useful for us to look at it into those two frames. In terms of what are the most potentials, obviously system by system, we need to look into it, but geothermal offer the best in the top hierarchy because PLN at the moment is not yet used to having an intermittency in their system. So geothermal obviously would be on top of the list. But at the same time, we also need to know that in major grids like Java, for example, right now we still have so small of VRE, variable intermittent RE capacity, that we can actually build quite a lot in the island. But of course the challenge is of course going to be the financial side of PLN. So there is no simple answer to this. The easiest way is to look at geothermal, but obviously there is the development risk. We also noted that there has been some program to lower the risk of exploration in geothermal. Secondly, to look at it from the eastern side, the smaller islands, and that's why we need to acknowledge that PLN's plan for de-dieselization is something that we need to support. 5,000 power plants that can be replaced by renewable energy sounds like an interesting opportunity. And again, thirdly, of course, when we look at the major grids, hopefully PLN will be able to open the opportunity for solar PVs, winds and so forth, maybe starting with the floating PVs and so forth. So there are 3 different ways to how we should approach this question. So I'll stop there right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Putra. I think it's a very interesting discussions about the economics of the building power plant, especially the renewable one. So I think probably Pak Joko, in your opinion, which are the low-hanging fruit or the easy win strategy which Indonesia can deploy in the short term in terms of renewable and the energy transitions? Which area do you think is the most feasible that can be done at the moment?
Okay, thank you. Good question. I just want to divide it by 2. First one from electricity and others. Okay, we already success. Probably we are the first in the world to use, we call it B30, biodiesel. We already success, and then we will increase B40, even 100. We will continue with that. Then, secondly, we also starting. We believe we already put in the Grand Strategy Energy Nasional. If we compare geothermal and solar PV, we believe solar PV will increase significantly compare others new renewable energy power. Why? Because if we look the cost for the investment compare 10 years ago is already reduced 90%, the investment for solar PV. Secondly, the investment is cheap. I mean, we can install by personally in our home, in our building, in this hotel, from small one, middle, and bigger one. So that's mean in our strategy we believe we optimize solar PV is more favorable compared to others. Secondly, geothermal. Why geothermal? Because I think we are now number 3 in the world, the installed capacity, Pak. Number 2 already. First one America, yeah. Secondly, the source of geothermal, I think we are number 1 or number 2 in the world here. Reserve number 1. So, right, definitely. The problem is just only the investment. The government now already helped. I mean, for the exploration, small exploration, the budget come from state budget. Yeah, we already do it to to reduce risk and investment also. I think there are 2 new renewable energy. I think will improve in the future, and others probably from water. We call it hydropower. Even the small one, and also the big one from water, because we still have many river. We have 2 season. Compare others country we hujan season musim hujan dan musim panas already. So I think the 3 of them is more favorable for Indonesian to increase new renewable and also besides electricity for transportation, like I said before, we develop biofuel and also now we're trying for the gasoline, biogasoline and bioafter. We already try 2.5% for after and also 15% for biogasolines. Thank you.
Secondly,
this is from the energy, and then we also starting to develop electric vehicle, right? So government president regulation already there, number 55 years 2015 to accelerate use of the electric vehicle, and then we now build the factory for electric vehicle. We already have 11 producers of electric vehicle, and also already 3 for the produsen mobil, Pak ya. Udah ada 3, dan we already groundbreaking for battery fabrication here in Indonesia. So there are also we believe will contribute more and more for net zero emission, and also like I said before, we already also groundbreaking, yeah, what you call it, DMA factory, yeah, by President, and also we are already by PLN to give 300 household for the electric stove, yeah, free of charge, yeah, and our target every year 2 million after that to reduce LPG. Thank you, Pak.
Pak Nelwin, you have anything
if I might add what Pak Joko explained earlier. You're right, Pak Joko. Indonesia have very huge geothermal potentials. We are currently the second largest country in the world with a total installed capacity of about 2.3 gigawatts, yeah, after the US. But in the next 8 years until 2030, based on projections, Indonesia will be the #1 country in geothermal, because we still have about 28 gigawatt reserve potential capacity in Indonesia to be developed, and this is indigenous resource to Indonesia, yeah, unique to geothermal reserves is only owned by several countries in the world. Not all countries have geothermal reserves, and we are blessed with this ring of fire volcanoes that provide us with huge geothermal potentials. At the moment, as explained by Pak Putra and Pak Joko earlier, the cost of developing geothermal power is still comparably high as compared to other resources like thermal power plant or hydro. But because about half of the cost of this geothermal development is on the exploration stage, if somehow the government will be willing to step up to conduct this government drilling, it will reduce the investment cost or investment requirements significantly. So we believe we can be comparable or more competitive compared to even thermal coal power plants if there is some initiatives from governments to conduct government drilling. That's my additional 2 cents, Pak.
Thank you, Pak Nelwin. Would like to ask the audience if you have any questions. I guess not for the time being. Let me follow up what Pak Joko and Pak Nelwin said. I think the other current issue which hampered the energy transition is definitely something that everyone is talking about now, which is the rising cost inflations. We see rising raw material costs, battery, steel, etc. So I will ask the panelists to give their thought on this issue. Probably we can start with Pak Putra first on this issue.
Thank you, Pak. So when we talk about a detour in energy transition, I think it will happen everywhere. We see the same thing happening in Europe, where they have problems with their gas supply. Therefore, they have the Repower EU. And we think that the same thing will, of course, turn up to a certain degree in Indonesia. Now, one thing we need to keep in mind when we look at Indonesia is that, number one, the country is growing, which means the demand will be growing. And secondly, if you notice, like in Pak Joko presentation, on the grand strategy of the country, there's a lot of priorities going between the oil sector and the coal sector as well. So in the past, the oil sector is pretty much decoupled from the coal sector. You're talking about the transport and you're talking about the power sector. This is the first time that we're seeing the merging of both sectors with the trend of electrifications. So if you notice that in the past 5 years, Pak Joko mentioned the adoption of biodiesel at quite a significant price support shows that the priority is very high on the Indonesian government. So the way we should see Indonesia's energy transition is not solely looking at the coal side, but also looking at it from the oil side. Because when both sectors are combined, there is a strategic imperative for Indonesia to go through an electrification, EVs, adoption of clean energy, and so forth. Secondly, I'd like to point out is that we all know in here that there's a lot of coal divestment policy, investors starting to back away from coal, regardless of the current trend of high price. And I like to put it is that there is no way for Indonesia to look back. There is only one way, and that's going forward. Now, there is in between, there is a gap. How do we jump from the coal side to the renewable energy side? So I think that's where there's a lot of hope for the investors to come in and looking at the growth. So I think it's very clear that there are some challenges in PLN, excess capacity, and so forth. We can talk all day about that, but I think those 2 points need to be taken into emphasis. Number one, again, we cannot see energy transition solely from the decoupling from coal, but we need to look at it from the oil and coal sectors, because what happened in the biodiesel, that the government is willing to spend trillions of rupiah as an incentive for it, can happen on other side as well. Maybe we're looking at cross-subsidizing from coal, revenue tax, going it from renewable energy. This can happen one of these days. So I'll stop from there. Thank you.
I think we can ask Pak Joko to give his comment about that remark, Pak. Do you think there will be some acceleration in terms of the regulations, basically to combat this issue?
Regarding regulation, currently we still, fulfill some tasks from the parliaments regarding our RUU, the draft of the new and renewable energy law, and also presidential decree regarding the price of new and renewable energy. So because in the draft there is so much incentive, fiscal and non-fiscal. So we need government budget to accelerate the new and renewable energy. And also some presidential decree, minister decree already, stipulated, already produced, like I said, for electric vehicle, President Decree number 55, 2019, and based on the regulation, many minister regulation produced based on that one. I would like also to some addition regarding the transition energy. There are some, some strategy. First one, if we compare fossil amongst oil, coal and gas, so for the transition, we use a lot of gas, right? So currently, more than 65% our gas production we use for domestics. Others we export, because we will increase the gas for the transition period. The problem is the infrastructure. Yeah, we need more infrastructure for development of the gas to use in our country. Some budget now already approved by Minister of the Finance to develop transmission gas pipelines. We already, seeing long time ago, also always from the government budget for city gas, right? The second one, like I said before, we use gas for transition, and also we developed biofuel for transportation, and also now we use electricity even for transportation, for motorcycle, for cars, and also for cooking. Yeah, we will develop everything by electricity. So there are three main strategy. We use gas, we use electricity, and we use new and renewable energy for electricity and for the transportation. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Joko. Before I ask Pak Nelvin on his comments regarding these cost inflations, probably I will ask Pak Putra again. So you talking a little bit about contributions of selling the gas. We also hear a few news that the Indonesia is planning to export the electricity probably to Singapore. What's your view on this? Is it doable or is it allowable? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Bob. So I guess the technical answer, it's doable. The economic answer is doable, but of course there is the other consideration as well. Last year we see several companies announce the plan to build, some power plants close to Singapore, for example. But then earlier this year there was some notification from the investment ministries that basically say that Indonesia want to keep the renewable energy for itself first as a priority. That's a political imperative. That's a political decisions that we need to respect. In my view, both things should be running at the same time, and it's about keeping the balance right. Because if, for example, Indonesia cannot yet afford to build 5 gigawatt of solar for economic considerations, by building some capacity, it allows us to build the industry. Because at the end of the day, one of the key challenges that we are noticing, and I don't want to focus only on solar, there are obviously others like geothermals and wind and so forth. But if we're looking at the solar, the problem is like the chicken and egg, right? Where the developers, to build factories, they need a consistent capacity, procurement, long-term and so forth. And if, as a country, we are not yet able to pick it up within the first 1 or 2 years, I think it's positive for Indonesia to be able to export some of it. So I think we need to respect the government decision, but in my view is that we need to find the balance so that we can get the benefits by having a local supply chain quicker, while at the same time, getting revenues, while at the same time, having some export commodities. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Putra. So let's get back to Pak Nelvin regarding the cost inflation issue. Probably can you share whether there is any impact to the project return that you plan to undertake in the next 5 years?
Yeah, thank you, Pak Bob. Actually, one of the key strengths of geothermal power or geothermal energy, it is less affected or impacted by inflation. We have no feedstock cost once we're operating up and running. Basically, most of our operating cost is the maintenance, while the direct cost, about 60-65% of our cost of revenue is actually depreciation, which is already spent upfront. Yeah, so I would say geothermal energy is less impacted by inflation. We can commit to PLN on our PPA agreement during the period of PPA contracts with a very minimum impact of inflation. Mostly it is related to services and human capital, but the operating cost itself is less impacted by the rising inflation.
And how about for the capex, whether is there any impact from the inflation, cost inflation, sorry?
Currently, we already experience rising services for drilling, Pak. Because with high oil prices at the moment, there are competition to secure the drilling contractors. Some oil companies are willing to pay more to get the drilling equipments moved to their sites. So what we're experiencing currently is significant increase on the cost of drilling, especially for the renting of drilling equipments.
Thank you, Pak. Yeah, would like to open the floor again to audience if you have any questions. No, so let us move on the discussion then. I think I'll go back to Pak Putra to give his opinions about how the Indonesia compared to the other ASEAN countries, other neighbors, in terms of the progress of the energy transitions. Are we quite fast, not fast enough? So yeah, probably can you share some thought on this?
If we're looking at it from the fuel side, the biodiesel adoption, if we consider biodiesel all procured sustainably, we're moving quite fast. But if we look at it from an electricity generation standpoint, and to be frank, we are not exactly upfront in the ASEAN. We notice that Vietnam has all adopted, more solar capacity, wind, Malaysia, and so forth. But one thing we need to keep in mind is that the context will be different. Like in Indonesia, on the run-up from the 2015 to today, we built so many coal plants that we have a lot of excess capacity. So it's not that easy when you compare us with Vietnam, which has a strong growth of industries, and they're still basically balancing out the supply and demand. And right now we still have a lot of excess supply. So it's a bit challenging for PLN to be able to adopt renewable energy, so to say. Again, the context is different with an archipelago. We're not the same like Vietnam or Laos, where they have a lot of rivers, have hydro capacity. The problem with Java and Sumatra is that the population is concentrated there. At the same time, all the coal plants are also there, and it's not easy to link it to other sources. So I guess the archipelagic nature of Indonesia poses a challenge, but secondly also that we have a past baggage, so to say, with the excess capacity of coal that countries like Vietnam or Thailand may not have to the same degree. So yes, we are now still lagging, but like I said in an earlier point, now that Indonesia has wake up and realized that the coal funding is slowly drying up on the coal power, I think the only way to look is to look forward. And we hope that that'll be the good leverage point for Indonesia. Thank you.
Thank you. On the end statement, I would like to devolve even more. I think some countries already talking about phasing out coal. I think ADB announced the energy transition mechanism, which basically they're going to finance the coal power plant to be shut down. I think I will ask Pak Joko about what your thought about this. Is it are we in the process of doing that and closing down the coal, or you reckon it is still necessary to operate those coal power plants?
Yeah, actually, in my slide number, any phasing out of the coal, we already have the roadmap. If we implement this roadmap, I think, yes, we need investment to develop, to replace, the coal, yeah. Yes, this one. In the slides, we can see the location and also the roadmap to phasing out of the coal generation, yeah. Why until now we still use coal? Because like Pak Putra said, the ecosystem, the system already there. So the coal is the cheapest one we use, and also Indonesia has we have a lot of coal. We have production coal per year around 700 million ton per year. So 550 million we use for our electricity, and the others around 550 we export the coal. So that's the reason why we still use coal, even we still have the roadmap to phasing out, and then depend on the technology and depend on how fast the cost to use CGS or CGS. Yeah, in some country, in Japan, for example, they still use a coal, but they implement the technology or to capture CO2. So the emission is very small. So if the technology growing up faster and then the cost to use CCUS, probably we can still use coal, and then we need, like you said, from ADB to, to invest for CGS, I think, to reduce CO2. Yeah. I think that's my comment regarding the coal. Yeah. But again, for the transition, yeah, we use a lot of gas for electricity, and before we replace coal, before new and renewable energy ready, like in Vietnam, like Pak Putra said, very quick there, we still use, in transition, yeah, for gas. After we ready for from new renewable energy, and then we starting to reduce the coal. But if we still use, but should be implement the CCS.
Thank you, Pak. I think my other questions, this one is for Pak Nelwin, is about I think Pak Putra briefly mentioned it about the locations of the power plant is also important, because I think we all know that 60% of our GDP is located in Java, and some say that the current condition is already an oversupply situations. So probably can you share a little bit about in your project pipeline, what kind of locations which you think is suitable to develop a geothermal power plant in Indonesia? And also probably can you share a little bit about your thought about the current demand and supply situation in Indonesia, especially after COVID? The demand was a little bit impacted by COVID, so what's your thought on this issue?
Thank you, Pak Bob. As I mentioned earlier, most of our concession area follows the Ring of Fire in Indonesia. So most of the geothermal area lies in Sumatra, Java, Bali, and Sulawesi. And as mentioned by Pak Joko and Pak Putra, Java is currently over capacity, while in eastern part of Indonesia, we have some potential area there, like in Kota Mobagu, in North Sulawesi. We also have one operation there in Lahendong with a total capacity of 120 megawatts. In fact, in Bali, we actually have one concession area in Bedugul area. So this new project in our pipelines scattered throughout the country from Sumatra, Sulawesi, Bali, and Java. As for the demand, we've seen some decline of electricity demand in general, especially in Java during the COVID. But in Sulawesi, it is quite stable. And actually, North Sulawesi is currently the highest province with renewable energy mix. Yeah? I think in North Sulawesi, renewable energy mix contribution is already achieving 30% of the total energy mix. So we are excited to develop new projects, and we believe the geothermal energy will form some sort of energy security for Indonesia, because we are less dependent on feedstock like coal or gas, yeah. And we have abundant resource here in Indonesia. So even though at the moment the demand for electricity in Indonesia is somehow a bit declined compared to pre-COVID era, we believe with the initiative taken by the government, as explained by Pak Joko, to push electrification for EV, motorcycles, and also cooking, replacing gas cooking with electric stoves, it will increase, and with the recovery post-COVID, it will increase the demand for electricity, and we have better opportunity to improve the contribution from renewable energy, including geothermal.
Thank you, Pak. Probably because you touched a little bit about the EV, I think this is my last questions. Again, another very important issue nowadays, it's about the electric vehicles. So I'll probably ask Pak Putra and Pak Joko to give 2 cents on this issue. Probably Pak Putra, what are needed actually to accelerate the EV adoption in Indonesia? Again, I think looking at a few reports, we are behind our neighbors in Malaysia, in Thailand. So what can we do to accelerate the development of EV in Indonesia?
Thank you, Pak Bob. I think the government need to have a more assertive position, assertive policy, in realizing that while the government also have big goal to increase our oil production, I think we need to live with the reality that expanding countries like Indonesia, just like China and India, we have to deal with the growth and demand at the same time, trying to arrest the oil decline. So the government need to be more assertive in their positions in incentivizing adoption. Now, so far we've seen, maybe Pak Joko is very familiar, there's at least a dozen policies that's already been rolled out, incentives, tax incentive, and so forth. Now, I am looking forward that we can at least reach the same level like India in giving the price incentive for purchasing of electric vehicles, whether it's four-wheelers. If four-wheelers is too expensive, then we go lower and go to the two-wheelers. India has a program that they call FAME, which is related to the purchase, but at the same time is related to the production of domestic supply chain for motorcycle. As we know in Indonesia, the market is somewhere around 6-7 million of annual sales per year. Now, AIFA actually is now looking into this, is that we need to acknowledge that there is a lot of legacy players which is invested in ICE, internal combustion engines. So they need to be part of the discussion, because if they want to be part of Indonesia's future, they need to acknowledge the country's challenge. And like I mentioned earlier, oil import is a big challenge for Indonesia, and they also need to be part of the solutions. And I hope we can see the players go into that directions. At the same time, we hope to see some more purchase incentive from the government, because we need to compare not just the amount of money, but the incentives versus the subsidies over the lifetime of such vehicles. So thank you. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Pak Putra. I think we have Pak Joko here, which is the right person to ask about the incentives and for the EV. And I guess in your place you already consider about this issue as well. So what is your thought about this, giving incentive to the EV to stimulate the sales of the EV?
Yeah, for the EV, for example, the incentive already there. Yearly tax, so very cheap now. I already use 1 year electric Hyundai Ioniq, yeah. The tax just less than 1 million per year. First one, and then second one, no, what's ganjil genap, yeah? No, free, yeah, free. Secondly, some tax also. But still expensive, people say, because biaya masuk itu apa? Import tax ya, import tax still there. Then already asked to the Minister of Finance to eliminate, to delete all of the tax for the electric vehicle. The problem is the infrastructure for the charging. Yeah, we need some investment. People said still limited. But for the motorcycle, we can charge anywhere. People also said take time, 3 hours, 1 hour. The technology now also we can swap battery for just 1 minute. We change. There are any in Indomaret, Alfamart, but still also limited. Currently only 500 until 1,000 outlet for swap battery. But for motorcycle, I think the price of the motorcycle now already same, even bahkan cheaper than motorcycle combines. Yeah, but for the car, yeah, still expensive. But for the motorcycle, I think many incentives already there. Then the price also some motorcycle already lower than combustion motorcycle. Masih.
Okay, thanks, Pak Joko. I think we already ran out of time, so I think to wrap up, yes, I think it's crucial and something what's necessary to promote energy transition in Indonesia. So we cannot, we are not left behind other countries, our neighbors. I think there is still some challenge to be ironed out, but I guess the Indonesian government already acknowledged that and is working to solve those issues. So yeah, I think that's wrap up our panel for today. I would like to thank Pak Putra, Pak Nelwin, Pak Joko for the presentations, and I hope it can give some insight to the audience on the net zero emission target in Indonesia. Thank you all, and have. Sorry, I think
one information. Currently, we already use biomass in our coal power plant. Already 32 power plant we use biomass, just combine biomass with the coal. From 5%, now we're trying until 20%. But the problem is the feedstock of the biomass very limited. So probably this is one of the opportunity, the business opportunity, I mean, in Indonesia. Others like CCUS and the others is we will increase more and more use biomass for our coal power plant. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Putra. I think that's wrap up our panel for today. And thank you so much. Thank you for attending and hope you have a good day ahead. Thank you.